Hi, welcome once again to the Fundibots YouTube channel. My name is Solomon King and I'm your host. Today we are going to meet the expert who is right here with us and he will introduce himself.
Thank you, Solomon. My name is Peter Mukiibi and I'm glad to be here with Fundibots to talk about expert things. I'm a co-founder at Addmaya Motion Pictures. Yeah, so I am a co-founder at Addmaya Motion Pictures. Addmaya has been in existence for 13 years and yeah, we've had quite a journey. It has had its challenges, but nonetheless, we are still here and we are still going strong.
Fantastic. So Peter, Addmaya does very many things, but mostly within the screen, like the things that you see, that you do are seen on a screen. And one of those things is animation. What is animation?
Good. So animation is literally a series of illustrations or pictures put together in a sequence form to cause motion or to show motion. And in film, there's something called frames per second. So you find that the eye sees 25 frames per second. You find that to have a smooth animation, you're probably going to have to draw 25 images.
Yeah.
And that will create
every single second that we are seeing of animation, there are 25 images that are flashing before your eyes.
Exactly. And what really makes an animation is when you have a character and then you give that character life or motion to move from point A to point B, and that's what really basically is an animation.
What are some of your favorite animations?
Wow, there's so many actually. So animation is, first of all, maybe I'll talk about the types because then that will give the viewers a bit of an understanding. So there's 2D animation and 3D animation. And then there's also something in between, which is called 2.5D animation. And basically 2D animation is animation that happens on a 2-axis. So there's no third axis, which is X, Y, if you did your math and your physics. So X, Y, that's 2D. And then when you add on the Z axis, that's 3D animation. So you find that cartoons like Tom and Jerry, and many others, DuckTales, these are done in 2D animation. Katoto is done in 2D animation. And then there's 3D animation where you have your Toy Stories, you have your, I brought something for you guys.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you have your, there's a cartoon, a famous cartoon on TV right now, it's called Paw Patrol, and kids really love it, you know. So that's done in 3D animation.
So which one is harder, 2D or 3D?
Now, that's a good question. Both are challenging in that they both require putting in the hard work. However, in terms of, most animations are done in a computer. So there's traditional animation where you draw on a piece of paper. Like these are basically sheets of paper whereby you keep drawing movement A, B, C, D, and then you scan these papers, and then when you put them in the computer, you can see that motion.
So you remember like back in school when you'd like draw pictures in the corner of the book and then you like rub it and then the picture looks like someone is running.
Exactly. So you find that what makes one harder or the other easier is the processing power it has on the computer. That's number one. And then also the technical skills. With 2D animation, you find that it requires a lot of artists because you're literally drawing every illustration. However, with 3D animation is when you create a character and give it bones, what you call a skeleton, and then give it flesh. And then you do what you call poses. The computer can generate for you those other poses. You can move the camera around, and that will be an animation itself, you know, without necessarily moving the character. Yeah, so that's what makes one easier or harder. But you find that many people usually specialize, and you go with what comes easy to you. So when we're in school, there are people who love drawing, and it came natural to them. So you find that they will find 2D animation much easier. However, 3D animation, because it requires computing power, mathematics, and things like that, you find that there's also a category that find that easier.
Cool. So what is the process of animation like? From the idea, if you've come up with an idea, you want to make this cool story about, you know, about your village, you know, growing up in your village. How do you transform that idea bring it from your head to a finished product that's on Netflix or YouTube?
Actually, that's a very good question. If you want to do an animation, it always starts with doing a little bit of research, you know, understanding, okay, what do I want my animation to look like, or what is it about, and things like that. So when you've done the research, and then you try to do what you call a script or a story, you know. So let's say your animation is about a talking car. So what is this car going to be saying? How many times is it going to appear on the screen? So that is what you call a script. So when you're done with the script, then you move into what you call storyboarding. Storyboarding is basically where you map out how long your animation is going to be, you know. Where does it start? Where does it end? What are the in-betweens?
So the storyboard gives you an idea of the key moments in the animation.
Yes.
That says, for this entire sequence, this is the most important thing. This is the angle of the camera. This is the words that are being said. This is the music that's going to appear.
Exactly.
And then the next scene looks like this.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah. So once you have that, then you have to do what you call voicing. Because animations are literally driven by voiceovers or narrations, you know. So if you're to animate a character, what is he saying? If he's scared, how is he going to look? You know, so that is a decision you make before you start animating. So once you have your voiceover and you have your storyboards, now you go into what you call animation. That's now where you start to create those numerous frames that are going to give you that motion from point A to point B of your character. How are the cameras changing? What, you know, sounds are we hearing? What are they saying? And the thing about animation is that one of the hardest things is to make sure that there's something called lip sync, that your characters are actually syncing with the voiceover, because their characters, they are expected to be talking or doing certain things, but all these are triggered by what the narration says. Yes. So once you've done your animation, then you layer on what you call now your sound effects and music. That's
like the explosions, the cars crashing, punches.
Exactly.
Nice.
So yeah, basically that's really the process of animation. And for any kid out there who wants to do animation, I know it might sound like scary, but the more you can break it down into steps, you know, you could say, I want my animation to be 4 seconds, you know, and then you start now working backwards. That's why it's important to have the story first and then approach it from a realistic point of view.
What kind of software do you use to work with animation?
So there are many softwares out there really that can help you animate, as long as you can draw an image in that software or instances of images you can animate in that software. So of course there's the classic Adobe package. Many artists and designers are encouraged to learn Adobe. And Adobe is really wide. It has your Photoshop, it has Illustrator, it has InDesign, but mainly if you're going to animate, you're going to use Photoshop and Illustrator. So yeah, then there are other softwares like your 3D softwares, which is, you know, Maya, Cinema 4D, there's Rhino, and The reason why there are many different types of software is that we're all wired differently.
So there's some software that reduces the complexity,
Exactly.
but you also lose a lot of control.
Yes.
And then there are others that give you a whole lot of control, but they get really, really complex.
Yeah.
So it's about finding your balance, like which do you want to focus on? Are you a more technical storyteller, or do you just like to dive right into the story?
Yeah, so there are softwares that are out there that are for the advanced artists.
Like the professional studios,
Yes.
and then there are those that are for beginners.
There are those that are for beginners, and they have free licenses, and you can go on the internet and download them and play around with them to hone your skills, so that by the time you maybe get a job at a studio, you already know the principles of design and how that happens. Yeah, so yeah, there are quite many.
Okay. Which one is your favorite?
Good question. I think so. That's a good question, because one of the things when you run a studio is that you realize projects like animation projects require a number of artists.
Yes.
So you find that at our studio, you find the people who are using the 3D softwares. There are others who are using the 2D softwares. I'm more of a 2D kind of person, but not the illustration. So animation also has another aspect to it, which is visual effects.
Yes.
And
sometimes called motion graphics as well.
Yes. So this is basically where you create computer-generated shapes and move them around. So you find that you might even have an image of real life action, and then you animate something on top of that. So that's visual effects, whereby you layer it on top. So yeah,
so like in movies when they show us like the rock is jumping from one building to another, it's actually
okay. Yeah, so that's something that is happening in a process called compositing. Yeah, and that's my favorite type of animation. So you find that for such you will use softwares like Nook. You can use Maya. After Effects is good for that. Yeah, and I think the beauty about these softwares is how the creators have been able to make them interact with one another. So you find that as an editor, you will start editing in a certain software and then push that into another software, do your animation, bring it back, layer on your music and things like that. So there are variety out there, but yeah, I think my favorite two, I would say, is After Effects and DaVinci.
Cool.
Yes.
Very exciting. I love After Effects too.
Yes.
So that was an amazing first part of the animation series. There is so much that you can learn, but thank you so much, Peter, for giving us your time.
You're welcome, Solomon. I've enjoyed this and I'm looking forward to part 2.
Awesome. Please be sure to check in again for the second part that will be dropping very, very soon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.